The air in courtroom 3B was thick with the usual Monday morning malaise. The stale scent of disinfectant mingled with the faint aroma of cheap coffee. Judge Eleanor Vance, a woman whose stern demeanor belied a deep-seated commitment to justice, adjusted her robes. She had presided over countless cases in her 20 years on the bench, from petty theft to complex corporate fraud. Today, however, promised to be a particularly grim affair: the arraignment of a homeless man accused of vagrancy, public disturbance, and resisting arrest. The defendant was brought in, his movements slow and shuffling. He was a black man, perhaps in his late 50s or early 60s, though hardship had etched lines into his face that made him seem older. His clothes were threadbare, stained, and ill-fitting, a tattered coat hanging loosely over his gaunt frame. A thick, matted beard obscured much of his face, and his eyes, though downcast, held a profound weariness, a quiet resignation that spoke of battles fought and lost, far from any courtroom. He smelled faintly of stale cigarettes on the streets. Officer Miller, the arresting officer, a young man with a clean-cut appearance and an almost aggressive eagerness, stood at the prosecution table, his chest puffed out slightly. He had found the man sleeping in a park, refused to move, and allegedly became combative during the arrest. "State your name for the record, defendant," Judge Vance commanded, her voice clear and authoritative, cutting through the murmurs of the courtroom. The man slowly raised his head, his eyes, a startling shade of hazel, briefly met hers. He opened his mouth, and a voice, surprisingly deep and resonant despite its rough edges, echoed through the quiet room. Elias Sterling." A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. Not a loud, dramatic gasp, but a soft, almost reverent intake of breath. Judge Vance, who had been idly flipping through the case file, froze. Her hand, poised to write, trembled slightly. Her eyes, which had been scanning the documents, snapped up, fixed on the man in the defendant's box. Elias Sterling. The name hung in the air, imbued with a weight that transcended the squalor of the courtroom. It was a name that had once commanded respect, inspired awe, and led men into battle. It was the name of a legend. Judge Vance slowly, deliberately removed her spectacles. Her gaze, no longer detached, was now filled with a mixture of disbelief, profound sadness, and a dawning recognition. She leaned forward, her voice dropping, almost a whisper. "Did you say Elias Sterling?" The man, the homeless veteran, nodded slowly, his eyes now holding a flicker of something that might have been surprise, or perhaps a faint, distant memory. "Yes, Your Honor, that's my name." Judge Vance closed her eyes for a brief moment, as if to compose herself, to process the impossible reality unfolding before her. When she opened them, they were glistening. She looked at the courtroom, at the stunned faces of the clerks, the bailiffs, the few reporters, the public observers. Then, with a quiet, almost imperceptible motion, Judge Vance did something unprecedented. She rose from her bench. The entire courtroom, as if on cue, followed suit. The clerks, the bailiffs, the prosecutor, the defense attorney, the reporters, the public, every single person in courtroom 3B stood in a silent, collective act of respect. The only one still seated was Elias Sterling, the accused, his eyes wide with bewilderment. "Mr. Sterling," Judge Vance said, her voice now thick with emotion, "I believe I speak for everyone in this courtroom when I say, it is an honor to be in your presence." Officer Miller, the arresting officer, stood frozen, his face pale, his earlier bravado completely evaporated. He looked from the standing courtroom to the bewildered man in the defendant's box, then back to the judge, his mind reeling. He had no idea who Elias Sterling was. Judge Vance then turned to Officer Miller, her voice suddenly sharp, cutting through the silence. Officer approached the bench. Miller, his knees feeling like jelly, stumbled forward. "Officer," Judge Vance began, her voice low, but laced with an undeniable steel. Do you know who this man is? Miller swallowed hard. No, Your Honor, just a vagrant. Causing a disturbance. Judge Vance's eyes narrowed. This vagrant officer is General Elias Sterling, a 4-star general, a decorated combat veteran of 3 wars, a recipient of the Medal of Honor, the Distinguished Service Cross, and countless other commendations. A man who led divisions, who advised presidents, who dedicated his entire life to serving this nation, protecting the very freedoms you claim to uphold. Miller's face drained of all color. The Medal of Honor, the highest military decoration. He felt a cold sweat trickle down his spine. General Sterling, Judge Vance continued, her voice now addressing the courtroom, a history lesson unfolding, was instrumental in countless operations. From the deserts of the Middle East to the jungles of Southeast Asia, he led from the front, never asked his men to do what he wouldn't do himself. He was a strategic genius, a compassionate leader, and a fearless warrior. He is, quite simply, one of the greatest military minds this nation has ever produced. She paused, her gaze sweeping over the now hushed courtroom. And he stands before us today, accused of vagrancy. A man who has given everything for this country, now abandoned by it. Her voice cracked slightly, but her resolve was unwavering. Officer Miller, she continued, turning back to him, her voice a low growl. You arrested a national hero. A man who fought for your right to wear that uniform, for your right to stand in this courtroom. You called him a vagrant. You called him combative. Do you have any idea of the gravity of your actions? Miller could only stammer. I didn't know, Your Honor. He didn't say anything. He didn't have ID. And did you ask? Judge Vance retorted, her voice rising. Did you offer assistance? Did you see a human being or just a stereotype? Your conduct, officer, is a disgrace to that uniform. It is a betrayal of everything General Sterling fought for. She then turned to the prosecutor, a young, ambitious woman named Miss Davies. Ms. Davies, I assume the prosecution will be moving to dismiss all charges immediately. Ms. Davies, her face equally pale, nodded vigorously. Yes, Your Honor, immediately. We were unaware of the defendant's identity. Unaware, Judge Vance repeated, a bitter edge to her voice. A convenient excuse. This court will be conducting a full investigation into the circumstances of this arrest and the systemic failures that allowed a national hero to fall through the cracks and be treated with such utter disrespect. She then turned to Elias Sterling, her expression softening once more. General Sterling, on behalf of this court and on behalf of a grateful nation, I apologize. Profoundly, for the indignity you have suffered, for the neglect you have endured. This is not how we treat our heroes. She then looked at the bailiff. Bailiff, please ensure General Sterling is escorted from this courtroom with the dignity and respect he deserves, and arrange for immediate medical attention, a warm meal, and appropriate accommodation on the court's expense. The bailiff, a burly veteran himself, nodded, his eyes glistening. He approached Elias Sterling, not with the usual brusqueness, but with a gentle reverence. He helped the general to his feet, a silent gesture of respect. As Elias Sterling was slowly escorted out of the courtroom, the entire assembly remained standing, watching him go, a profound silence hanging in the air. The man who had been humiliated, accused, and dismissed was now leaving as a hero, his true identity revealed, his quiet dignity restored. The news of the courtroom drama exploded. Homeless veteran revealed as Medal of Honor recipient, judge orders dismissal. The story captivated the nation, sparking outrage, shame, and a renewed conversation about the plight of homeless veterans. Judge Eleanor Vance became a national figure, praised for her integrity and her unwavering commitment to justice. She used her platform to advocate for veterans' rights, for increased funding for homeless shelters, and for systemic changes in how law enforcement interacted with vulnerable populations. She initiated a program in her own jurisdiction, requiring all police officers to undergo mandatory training on de-escalation, empathy, and the specific challenges faced by veterans. Officer Miller's career was over. The video footage from the courtroom, showing his aggressive demeanor and Judge Vance's scathing rebuke, went viral. He was immediately suspended, then fired, his actions deemed a gross abuse of power and a profound disrespect for those he was sworn to protect. He faced internal investigations and public condemnation, his name synonymous with callous indifference. The story of General Elias Sterling, however, was one of quiet resilience. After the courtroom revelation, he was inundated with offers of support, medical care, and housing. He accepted assistance, but with a humility that surprised many. He didn't seek fame or pity. He simply wanted to live with dignity. He eventually found a quiet home, surrounded by fellow veterans, and dedicated his remaining years to advocating for those who had fallen through the cracks, ensuring that no other hero would suffer the same fate he had. He reunited with some of his former comrades, men and women who had served under him, their faces etched with the same weariness, but their eyes lighting up with recognition and profound respect when they saw their general. He shared his story not as a victim, but as a testament to the enduring spirit of service and the importance of never forgetting those who have sacrificed everything. Years later, Judge Vance still presided over Courtroom 3B. But now, when a homeless person was brought before her, she looked at them not with detached professionalism, but with a profound sense of empathy, remembering the day General Elias Sterling stood in the defendant's box. She ensured that every individual, regardless of their appearance or circumstances, was treated with dignity and respect, that their story was heard, and that justice in its truest form was served. The memory of that day, the collective rising of the courtroom, was a constant reminder that true honor lay not in rank or wealth, but in the unwavering commitment to human dignity, especially for those who had given so much.